Hi, I'm Gail Minogue, and I'm thankful that you're here today to watch me for a few minutes. Today's topic is going to be on this recent divulged copy of the amendment, not the amendment, but the decision from the Supreme Court on overturning Roe versus Wade. How did this happen? Well, we know how it happened, but why is it happening now? And what can we kind of get a background on so to help us understand this better? Why now? Why not? I say, why is this a surprise? So I want to take us back in time to probably when we became what we'll call hunters and gatherers in a society. So let's go back about 10,000 years, where women's role as the hunter or the huntress ended, or were ending, where she went out and fought the enemy, great sniper, good use of the bow and arrow, was a killing machine. And then we began to be domesticated and we started to grow our grains and all that. And women didn't go out on the hunt as much anymore. The men went out, the women stayed, and they did whatever you do with your processing grains and gathering. We weren't doing that so much anymore. We became more domesticated. And once we became domesticated, we began to lose our power because our necessity was really supplying the food, and that was the hunt. And that became left to the men. So the men became, over time, we're talking thousands of years in all different societies, from the Babylonians, Egyptians, you name it, all these societies became more and more male dominated. And the role of a female became more restricted, more marginalized, and less important. And she basically became a baby-making machine. She lost her power. And it became even more and more extreme as we go into the Greeks and the Romans, where women were covered. Actually, one of the worst groups were the Greeks, and covering up the female. So she was very much used as a baby machine. And if you read any of Aristotle's writings about the female, you could see how that society was very perplexed for the use of the female other than a baby machine, and that she was not valued because you couldn't see her seed, whereas a male seed, you could easily see that on the ground, but you couldn't see the female seed. And besides, she bled every month. So she was just weird, and actually they couldn't really tell what gender to call her. So this over time diminished her power more and more covering. Today we even see the Taliban have gone back to the women have to wear the full burqa, and the only way that they can see is through slits in their on the eye portion of the burqa. So it appears to be going backward in time, but it is not. We are in an ending period, ending of a long, long line of what we'll call a patriarchal rulership. And it is no different in the United States. We have had patriarchal rulers through the last thousands of years, and the female was basically considered property of the male. And even in the United States, it took till 1920 to even recognize that the female was able to vote. And of course, in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, we have all these lofty words, but all of them refer to men. So female had to be always the property of the husband, and they were more like marginalized or treated as the children. You had to have approval of the husband, and she had no rights of what we'll call inheritance. And so over time in the United States, which began in 1776, became a catalyst of change. And it was to be one of freedom, quote, equality, all that stuff, lofty words, but none applied to females. So around the year 1999 was the beginning of the end of the rulership of the patriarchy, because we now have begun with the number 2. And I impress upon you all to remember the number 2 is a feminine number. It takes 2. All right, one is not complete without two. Two together make number three, or the egg and the sperm unite and make the third, or the baby. So the number two is always considered the female number. And so we are now beginning the age of, say, not the patriarchy anymore, but the matriarchy now, and where we combine these two. And so the female must rise in power, and she has started it. So back in 2000, or 22 years ago, you began to see more and more women taking positions of power, not only in the government, but also in the corporate. It's gradually been building and building and building, and is creating controversy along the entire journey. So we have 1,000 years of the matriarchy. 1,000 years. This period of the power of the female rising and getting stronger and stronger will go to the year 2999. So we're only in the first 22 years of it. So when you are the end, or they say the scorpion, the end of the scorpion sting. The sting is at the end. And that is what you're seeing. You're seeing an ending of a patriarchy. Tremendous amount of fear of losing control. What is the control that it's really all about? Roe versus Wade. It is control of the female. It's as old as time. It's as old as when we got domesticated. This is not a new event. This is to go and show you the rights of the female and the lack of rights of the female. Okay, so this is about power and control of the property of the female. It's as simple as that. It has nothing to do with the gestation period, or life begins at conception, or is it a vital fetus, or any of that, or it ends at 15 weeks or 20. It's nothing about that. That's all smokescreen. It is basically about the rights of the female. Because if she has to be told she must keep this child until a certain time, she cannot abort it without maybe being arrested, put in prison. Anyone who help hers will be put in prison. This is going back to the old days, old thousands of years old, where we punish the female. It also is showing you how we're going to have a lot of arguments and fights going forward. If this decision stands, we'll know in about the end of June, beginning July. And if it stands, you're going to see one controversial lawsuit after another, as all these different states tumble out with medicated abortion versus arresting this person who told me this or that. It's called a vigilante type of power. But it all comes down to controlling of the female, the property of the female. Who does she own now? Who owns her now? Well, it's now saying the state. The state owns her rights, that she cannot control her body. This is very old stuff. So as we move more and more into the two and more into the matriarchy, the patriarchy in the end is a Scorpio tail, is more fearful of losing. So this is, we'll use the Catholic Church, we'll use the evangelicals, we'll use whatever we need to use. We'll need the far right, we'll use the Supreme Court, whatever we can do to control her as property. So you're going to see tremendous amount of lawsuits all over the place, and we'll bring up why this will not work, okay, number one. And number two, the innocent people that went along with this, how much danger they're going to be put into. So the politicians that voted against Roe versus Wade, all of them are going to have some type of exposure and threats to their own way of using power and control and all that, and their own political. The problem with the United States is it's in what we call a decadence periods of an empire. Remember, I don't know if you've gone back on any of my other YouTubes where I talk about the power of the empires. Empires last about 250 years, and America is at year 248. So a lot of things are going to start to change. And so we have to get past to 2024, where you will start to see more and more of the rights for the people versus the rights of the corporate and the government. And religion, overall, is a Piscean age construct. It was formed during the Piscean age, which lasts about 2,200 years. And that period ended around the time of the beginning of the United States. So we're not very far into this age of Aquarius, but the age of Pisces brought up all these mainstream religions that we have today. They weren't here before. Judaism, but rabbinical Judaism is what we have today versus the religion of the Israelites, which was prior to this period. So the rabbinical order, Catholicism, Protestantism, Islam, Buddhism, all came in the same age of Pisces, which is dying out. So you're going to see less and less religion going forward, and yet a grip and hold by those who are losing power, which means the Catholic Church, a lot of these evangelical areas. It's the dying grip. There is a death grip, and this is it. And this new Roe versus Wade is it. Eventually, we will come back to more and more rights, because if you cannot have an abortion and you're a college student and you want to continue and become whatever, you lose your right if you have to bear a child. The state is making you bear a child. How does that sound? How does that sound if you're a poor woman who's been beaten by her husband and can't afford to leave a household and gets pregnant again and is already been told never to have another child because it's danger to her health, and she's now forced to bear another child? What happens to her? So it's all of these equal rights that women do not have. It has nothing to do with abortion. It's all about power and control and keeping the property of the female where she is. So it's also removing her possibilities of advancing. So this will change, but right now this is what we have to do to work our way forward. It will change. The more and more we get into the twos, the more and more this will become impractical to live with for a society and for business. It's bad for business. And once you get bad for business in the United States, the laws will change. This is not a good for business rule. You will see, but that takes some time. So we have to wait another couple of years. We get past this Pluto in Capricorn. We get away from the corporate and the government connection, because this has a lot to do with it. It all is about control. And we'll talk about a lot of the American structure of government at another time. But I just wanted to have you see another point of view on Roe versus Wade. Do not get too discouraged. It's going to blow up itself because the lawsuits are going to be profound and often. Now, maybe there's a slim chance that this decision will be changed between now and July, but I doubt it. I think it's on purpose to actually get more rights for women once we get past this bad spot. It's like a bad surgery. You have to go through it to get better. Okay, so we'll talk more about it. Thanks for listening. If you need to reach me, you can at gailminogue.com on my website. I also have podcasts. You might like to listen to them there. And thank you, and we'll see you next time.